brought to you almost live from the Dude in the Basement Studios. Why? Because that's where the good stuff is. It's Sips, Suds, and Smokes with your smoking host, the good old boys. Suds, Suds, Suds. It's time for more Suds.
It is definitely time for more Suds. This is good old boy Mike. Welcome to Sip, Suds, and Smokes. Our Suds episodes are everything in life that is worth discussing. I am one of your hosts today, good old boy Mike. Joining me for this episode today are Reverend Mark.
Good afternoon, folks.
Good old boy Dave.
Hello, hello.
Good old gal Julieanna.
Hi, everyone.
This segment today is going to be about beer, and more beer. All of our Sud segments cover that amazing subject. Our episode today is actually going to be a show and tell series on sour beers. I know a lot of people have requested more sour beer shows, so we have a great show and tell show. Our show and tell series is really simple. Each of our hosts has brought in a beer today. They're going to introduce the beer that we brought, and we are going to rate those beers. And reading our ratings today is going to be good old boy Dave. Dave, tell us what we're going to talk about here.
We'll be tasting and discussing these beers and rating them with the SUDS ratings plus our signature belching sounds. Here are those ratings now. Number 1, that sucks. Give me anything but a bud. Number 2, was that a belch? Number 3, what a relief. Number 4, a body should really not make that sound.
Excuse me, that was one after one of the beers I had.
And number 5, listen to that hang time, give me another.
Excellent. So some really great beers that we have to share with everybody today. The beers that we're going to go over are going to be in this order as well. Timmermans, Oude, Gueuze, Evil Twins, Femme, Fatale, Brett, Against the Grain, Brett, the Hipman Hop. And the last beer we're going to talk about is Lindemans Faro. So those are the beers we're going to get to go over today. A very broad range of beers that we're going to discuss today. So let's get right to the beers. Next, the very first beer we're going to have up is going to be the Timmermans Oude Gueuze. This is the beer I actually brought. So this is a lambic style Gueuze, and my co-hosts are seeing that I am using the proper hand gesture of throwing my arms up in the air when you're supposed to say Gueuze. So I know. Don't ask me how many beers I had before I finally learned that effectively, with some other Belgian. But anyway, this is it's known as a champagne of beers, and usually a Gueuze is something that is blended. This particular lambic is blended between beers that have been aged 3 years and a very young lambic that they blended this with. We've talked about here on the show what an amazing concept of blending beers is really coming around within beer making right now. And this is a very traditional Belgian beer. It's been around for a very long time, a Gueuze style, where they're actually blending lambics like this. And I could not wait to open this up today. I've never had it before today. So my tasting notes are that I thought that it was a bit more tart than sour, but it had really great balance. It was very tasty. It just reminded me of graining apples in a bottle. It was just everything that I could think of with many of the Gueuzes that we've had, but I would definitely say this bottle would be probably in my top 5 of all the Gueuzes that I've had. I mean, it's really that good. I'm not going to rate the beer, but we're going to go around. Reverend Mark, what do you think about the Timmermans Oude Gueuze here?
Well, I think this is a total spot on of the Gueuze. That is, you have, as the backbone of all beers, at least as they start out, there's malt, but in many of your lambics and especially Gueuzes, it's sometimes overly scrubbed down by the lambic yeast, so that it's overly attenuated and somewhat puckeringly dry, which I think, in my opinion, shoves way too much of the sour forward. I think this one, by contrast, is just wonderfully balanced. I think, for me at least, I usually have to have the right mindset before I want to venture into a straight lambic of any kind. But this one, I could drink, a full glass of this, even a pint of this. I mean, savoringly, not quickly, but it's got some grapefruit notes, a little bit of lemon. I thought it was really, really good, and I have to say I would give it a 5.
Oh, listen to that hang time. Give me another. Good old boy Dave, what'd you think of Timmermans Oude Gueuze here?
Yeah, as I was drinking this, I was thinking, if I closed my eyes and held out a glass and said, give me a Gueuze, this is one of the beers that I would really want.
Now, see, I saw you with your eyes closed, and I thought you were thinking, oh, my God, thank God good old boy Mike brought this beer. Oh, I can't believe he brought this.
Wow. You must have really long
delusions
arms to be able to pat yourself on the back.
Hang on
that
a second,
easily.
let me deflate my ego here just a little bit.
How'd this guy get his head through the door? So, anyway, back to the Gueuze.
Yes.
No, great job bringing this in. Seriously, Timmermans is a really strong brewery. Anyways, I've had a few of their beers and everything's been really good. To go along with Reverend Mark, the acidity and the sourness is there. It's definitely there, but it doesn't dry you out as it finishes, and it's got a nice balance to it. And so, again, I'll go along with Reverend Mark, and I'll give it a 5.
Listen to that hang time. Give me another. Yep. Little gal Julieanna, what do you think about Timmermans Oude Gueuze here?
Well, I, too, am very happy that you brought this in today.
Let's all thank Mike.
Yeah, she's trying to suck up.
No, but seriously, Gueuze can be done really well, and it can be done and be scary. And this clearly is done very well. It's very balanced. It's very yummy. It doesn't linger on the tongue in that super lambic way that can scare people
Kinda
away
coat your
from.
tongue, yeah.
Can scare people away from this style of beer. It's yummy. I mean, it's just yummy, and that tart apple is like so spot on, because that's exactly what it is, and it gives you that flavor, and then it goes away.
Yep.
And it's just yumminess. Yeah. And me, like everyone else, it's a 5.
5 as well. Well, there you have it. A really great beer for us to start out of the gate. There's a little bit more to the story here about this beer, so I got to tell you. This particular beer was born out of a beer trip bust that happened. I was actually in high pursuit of a Cantillon that I wanted to find. It was at a beer store in the Brooklyn area. I'm not going to name which store it was, because when you hear the rest of the story, I don't want to give anybody a poor impression. This is it's a great shop. They have a really great growler fill. They have a restaurant side. And it's a really good store. But I had called ahead, and they had a few bottles of a couple of Cantillons that I really wanted very badly.
Right.
And I had been chasing the distribution truck around town. I mean, it was that bad, okay? And so I called ahead, had the bottles reserved that I was planning to, and I actually was moving around on the subway that day, and I didn't recognize that the distance between the subway stop and this beer store was more like 4 blocks, and it was all uphill. And I was carrying around my I have a carrier that I have to drag along the ground, and dragging that 4 blocks a little bit uphill was not a good idea. So by the time I got to the beer store, I walked in, and I'm like, thank God, I feel the quest has been on. Now I got the hunt down, I got the kill, right? Walk in, beer was gone.
Oh.
The Cantillon was ghost, man. He was like, some guy called up and he bought every bottle we had in the store and snapped them all up.
Dang.
And he said, I'm sorry, we just do not reserve bottles. If you are here in the store and have cash in hand, that's just kind of the way it goes. I know.
Right.
You can pick up your, pick pick it up off the floor. It's like, okay. So I started looking around in the store after, I just, my bubble's been burst about it. I'm like, oh, God, what am I going to do now, So I started looking around the store and picking up 2 or 3 things. And again, I'm standing in front of the area where they had all of their Belgians. And lo and behold, this was sitting right there on the shelf. It happened to be at eye level. And I was like, it's been a while since I've seen that on the shelf. And I'm like, I'm not going to pass it up this time. And I grabbed 2 bottles, when I was there, along with some other stuff, some of which we've had on the show as well. But this particular bottle it's not incredibly difficult to find. But you do kind of have to hunt it down, and not a whole lot of people want to stock this because it's probably a bit pricey compared to maybe some other beers. But I would say that it's going to be sitting in the section with the rest of the Belgian beers, as well. But I'm glad I did get to bring it back, even if it was out of a busted trip. I have to say this was definitely worth the climb up the hill that day, to bring this back. So I know that you guys were on the show that we tasted the Gueuze Tilquin, the Oude Tilquin, and I'm curious. I don't have that alongside this right now, but any comparisons between the two that you can recall?
I like this one better.
I have to say,
I do too. Yeah,
and I still have 2 bottles of the Tilquin.
Yeah, I mean that one's good
right now as well. They're both really great beers.
They're both really good, but this is really strong.
Yeah,
I mean for the style,
it's the balance.
Yeah, it's strong, but it's clean. Whereas the Tilquin lingered a little bit, at the back end. And that's not to say that the Tilquin isn't bad. It's just the Tilquin is more widely available to those that want to try a Gueuze that never tried it before. But if you could seek out the Timmermans, they rate it well, and
And you did today as well, and I think that's a good tip-off for people. So you see that sitting on the shelf, and instead of buying two bottles of something else, buy one of these. I think you're going to come out way ahead, and I think you'll be very happy with that. So definitely, if you're a Gueuze fan, should definitely check this particular beer out.
Gueuze!
Definitely. All right, so our next beer up is from Reverend Mark.
Okay, we have the evil twin Femme Fatale. In my mind, first of all, it's right in the middle of the road in terms of alcohol by volume, 6%. And for me, at least, what I love about this beer, and I just think it's so unparalleled, is that it's a funky IPA, truly funky. It puts you within sort of the sour, sort of if you are venturing towards the dark side of embracing the funk in sour beers, then for me at least, this is one way in which there is kind of a sour pairing of both malt, hop, and what this Brettanomyces will do to a beer. If you're patient with it, and so it's a great tribute to a lot of this hybridization of beer styles that's going on today. I for one think that this particular evil twin, so much of what they're doing is raising the bar on the sort of the eclectic crafting of different styles into what we have here is a funky IPA. So you definitely have that American kind of floral citrusy type of hop going along with the just the Brett funk. So even though I have to say in comparing it to the other beers that we've been looking at and the last one we commented on, I'm going to kind of reserve my comments and say that, well, I'm introducing it, so I won't say what I'm going to. But it's way up there. It's way up there.
Cool. So, good old boy Dave, what do you think about the Femme Fatale bread here?
I I think it's a really good beer, and I think you could go a couple of ways with this beer. If you are an IPA person who would like to see what a Brett beer tastes like, this is the kind of beer you should try.
Huh.
And if you're a Brett beer person, like for tart beers and things, you know, you're from Europe or one of those places. And you want to maybe see what an American, you want to kind of get into the IPA kind of world, then this is a good introductory beer that way.
Are we talking Brett of a PBR?
See, oui. Wow. You know what? If somebody would make PBR with Brett,
wow, that's a whole different level.
I can see the wheels turning already. You guys are going to go home and do it, aren't you?
You would take over. You would take over Alabama. It would be crazy. Actually, all the hipsters would go crazy for that. Yeah. So all the hipsters like PBR now, and they all like Brett beers. That sounds like a perfect marriage.
I just don't think that would happen.
Anyway,
so what's your SUDS rating here?
So I'm going to rate this as a solid 3.
3. Was that a belch? I'm sorry. That was Oude relief. Good old gal Julieanna, what do you think about the evil twin Femme Fatale Brett?
Well, I'm a fan, and in a previous podcast that we did, I brought out the Femme Fatale Noir.
That's correct.
So me loving the Noir, I like this one just as well. You know, for a slightly different reason. I like the hoppiness. I mean, and if you look at this, it is not only. It is. Sorry, I'm looking up the hops in here that I saw, which I thought was kind of intriguing. Okay, so you're not only getting Galaxy and Citra and Cascade, which are very common, but you're also getting Summit in here. And I thought that's a nice blend of hops for those that are hop heads in the world, which there's many of you around. And I thought that was a good combination with the Brett. So I really enjoyed this beer, and like David said, it's a good introduction for those that like IPAs that want to see something a little funky, and for those that like the funk that want to see what it does to a true hop beer. I'm going to give this a 4.
Ooh, a 4. Great rating. I appreciate that. So my tasting notes here on Evil Twin Femme Fatale, the Brett. So glad you mentioned the Noir version. So because I actually saw the Noir sitting on the shelf very recently, and I was very tempted because I remember how much we raved about that beer that day. And the only beer I picked was Reverend Mark's Crab Apple over that Noir, and all of us raved about how much we enjoyed, and we had some really good beer that day, and in particular on that episode. And I remember thinking, wow, I never thought that I would say, one, that I really love a black IPA, and two, would I enjoy a Brett black IPA, and that definitely was what I remember from the Noir version. The Femme Fatale Brett that we tasted today, my tasting notes are, it was very earthy, sour. It was more like a sour beer when I think of when somebody says sour beer, but I would consider a sour beer you can chug. Can you say that in like one fell swoop sentence? Like,
sure. This one,
I'm sure that most people, it just needs to be in a PBR can, right, Dave?
There you go, Lawnmower sour beer.
Lawnmower sour beer. I love that. I would say that would be the Westbrook Ghost. Would be my choice for a Lawnmower sour beer. It's in a can. It's it's salty. It's good.
Pound it down, man.
Anyway, back to the Femme Fatale here. It was that earthiness, about it, and I did not read the profile of the hops, and I'm glad you covered those for everybody as well, Julieanna, because when I'm reading through some of the hops that are on here, I can understand why it is. It does present so much of the earthy quality, about it as well, based on, the mix of those hops as well. My SUDS rating for Femme Fatale Brett is going to be a 3. What a relief. So, that covers it around. What do you think, Reverend Mark? Did you enjoy everybody's reaction to your beer here?
Yeah, and I think that Julieanna brought out most of what I was, groping for earlier in terms of, the full bouquet of the American hop experience that's very much embedded in this beer. So, like if you're just a really super hophead American IPA / Imperial IPA fanatic, then this is one way to venture a little bit closer into the funk.
Well, we've definitely talked an awful lot about several of Evil Twin's products, and should definitely catch some of those other shows. Definitely at the top of my list would be don't miss the Family Feud episode on Evil Twin. That is a really great show about Evil Twin. So next up, good old boy Dave, you brought the next beer for us, Against the Grain, Brett, the Hipman Hop.
Yes. Brett the Hipman Hop is an American wild ale.
Would you have to think about it? You like a warm-up moment?
Well, I was distracted by the scenery.
Oh, okay, all right.
Okay, so, Brett the Hipman Hop is an American wild ale. It's about 8% ABV from Against the Grain Brewing in Louisville, Kentucky. This is a really great brewery. They're extremely inventive and innovative in the things they do. This beer in particular, if you want to talk funk, this is the funkiest thing I've seen out of Kentucky since Johnny Depp's haircut. Okay? It is crazy. I'm honestly not sure, and Reverend Mark, you may be able to help me, which strain of Brett they use in this. It almost, to me...
Like 2 or
like
3.
a Brett Trois, whether it's a Brett Trois.
Yeah, it could be, yeah.
Yeah, I pick up a little citrus in there.
Yeah.
So... I don't know exactly, but I'm leaning toward Brett Trois.
Yeah, so it's definitely not just a straight Brett B kind of beer. Light body, very drinkable. I'm a big fan of this beer and this brewery.
Just to mention real quick, the ABV on this is 8%. Now, Against the Grain, their distribution model is a little bit, very regional. You guys picked this up when you were in Louisville, and that is where the brewery's at, and it's really distributed very close in proximity to Louisville. Is why you can find it in neighboring Indiana and in Maryland and North Carolina are a few of the locations where they have been distributing, but for the most part, it's a very, very localized brewery, but also making some really wonderful beer, and I think certainly on the cusp of expanding their distribution model from what I've heard as well. So, good old gal Julieanna, what do you think about this beer here, Against the Grain, Brett, the Hipman Hop? We need like a funky,
where's Dr. Dre when you need him? Hello? Anyways. Sorry. I really enjoyed this beer. I think it's a Trois as well, because I'm getting a lot of grapefruit on it, and especially as it's warming up, it's really opening up in terms of that citrus flavor. But it's a really good drinking beer. It's a good summer drinking beer. And it's got a nice dry finish, and I'm really enjoying it. And I'm going to give it a 4.
4. My body should really not make that sound. Well, my tasting notes around the all funked up Hipman Hop Brett here. It's sometimes you grab a hold of something and it takes your palate in a place that you didn't anticipate, and this is one of those beers. I actually wrote down, it really took me, I think the thing, when you hear some of the things I wrote, I'm going to read this a little slower. It's a woody sour. In fact, the thing I could not figure out, it's almost like a putty aroma when you smell this. And it really took me a long time to kind of figure out. I was like, well, it's kind of like a wood putty, if you smelled it. But it's still very good. It's very different. It has like a very earthy. I did not look at the hop profile, for this. It says Apollo and Vanguard in it. I actually wrote down I thought it had Simcoe. Just because I thought it had a very earthy quality about it. I still, with all of this going on, this is really a funky beer, but a very good funky beer. My SUDS rating for Against the Grain Brett, the Hipped Hop Funk, I probably read that wrong, is for, which is... a body should really not make that sound. Reverend Mark, what did you think of Against the Grain, the Hipman hop?
This is the very first time I've ever had the privilege to sample this, and I am just forced, at least at this moment in time, to kind of compare it, within our conversation here around this table, to the Evil Twin, which I've introduced simply because it is sort of a melding of the American IPA experience with more of your sour, funky, Brettanomyces driven ales, and I'll have to say,
not chuggable.
not entirely chuggable, but what I liked about this was one is that the as I kind of looked at sort of the grain bill that makes up the the main backbone of the beer is that it's supplied mostly by Pilsner malt, which made sense to me because it's not overly malty. It's got that really nice clean malt aspect to it, and then it also has a pretty significant infusion there toward the end of the boil with Amarella, and so that explains for like some of the citrus, some of the spice that comes up as well. I feel as though, again, as I compare, and I'm comparing this mostly to the Evil Twin that I had earlier introduced, that this takes the sort of the hybrid aspect of the IPA / funky sour beer and moves it more toward the sour, just a little bit, and so that makes it a little less chuggable, you might say, vis-a-vis the Evil Twin. But I think in some ways, within the sort of the context of our discussion here and what we're evaluating, I really think that this particular beer does a superb job in sort of commending the sour to those who would otherwise just be hopheads. So, all things considered, within the sort of the scope of this conversation and what we're evaluating here today, I would give it a 4.
A very similar rating here. A body should really not make that sound. Wow. Interesting comments all the way around. What do you think, good old boy Dave, everybody's comments here?
I think everybody really captured what we were looking to bring to the show today.
Yeah. A very funked up beer for sure. It would be interesting to see this at a sour beer festival. Wouldn't you guys think that would be a very interesting thing to throw in the mix? I hope they come to the Funk Fest here at Yazoo. I think that would be interesting to put that in the room. Yeah,
that would be cool.
All right, Brandon, game's on, man. All right, Julieanna, around to you. Our last beer that we're going to get to talk about here is a beer from Lindemans. It is a lambic style Faro.
Okay, so I wanted to do something completely different. When most people think of sours, they think of something that is more lighter colored and super funky. Now, the thing about Lindemans, people know Lindemans for the lambics, those flavored lambics. They're very popular. But the Faro is a little different. It's a Flemish classic, and it's served throughout Brussels pretty regularly. But what's interesting about it is that when it was made, or when they came up with this style of lambic, it's a combination of young unblended lambics. So, so it's not old. But what was interesting was that the bartenders would put sugar in the glass or the decanter, whatever it was that they were using, and then you would pour this Faro over it.
Oh,
you would
we definitely did not have it that way today.
No, we did not. That's because this is the way it's bottled is different than the way it was originally made way back in the day when it was still fresh. So you would have this young lambic, and you would have some sugar in your glass, but they would also give you a mortar so that you can grind the sugar within the lambic. So it was uncarbonated, but you get this really interesting flavor. That being said, when you look at this lambic, which, by the way, is only 4.5% ABV, it's really dark in color, reminds me of like a vinegar. But what's neat is that you're getting the sugariness and that sweetness from the sugar that's been added, but you're also getting that vinegariness in the back end of what a true lambic is. So it's a nice little juxtaposition between what can be sweet and then what can be truly sour.
Well, thanks. I appreciate the introduction for the beer. Actually, I'm going to offer up my tasting notes first with this. I'm sorry, did you have some tasting notes around this you wanted to share?
Well, in terms of flavor, you're initially I'm getting this really sweetness. It's like a candied sugar, but on the back end of it, I'm getting the vinegar and I'm getting a true sour note to it, which I enjoyed.
Well, my tasting notes here for the Lindemans Faro, it is like a sweet cherry. And I actually started right. It's like a sweet cherry, Sprite or 7-Up or some type of clear cola, but I actually took that out. It is definitely more like just a sweet cherry all by itself. And even the way that you described it, of how they are introducing sugar, at the point of pour, it almost goes so far to say as if you were to come across a sweet cherry, probably not a Mascherino or like a super red, artificially red cherry, but just a natural sweet cherry, dipped it in sugar and tasted it, like, bang, you would absolutely have, it would be right on target for this beer for sure. It's a bit dry. It has a good balance of sweet and tart. And so I definitely would not describe this as a sour beer. But I wouldn't go so far to describe this as a Krek either, which I'm not a fan of Kreks. And I would probably, of all of the cherry beers that I've had, I would say I would probably come back to this particular classification. So my SUDS rating for the Lindemans Faro is going to be 3. What a relief. Reverend Mark, what did you think of Lindemans Faro?
Well, I'm a big Belgian fanatic on many levels, and I think that this is a great synthesis of what makes, at least in my mind, as I sample this beer, it reminds me on one level of a Belgian double that is so wonderfully complex with all the malt and caramel and actually Caramunic malt that contributes toward sort of a dark sugar, bright fruit kind of balance, and then I find an infusion of lambic fermentation that nudges it, more toward it being somewhat of a Flemish ale, but not completely like tart and drying. So, I found it to be, because of the ABV on it, which is a considerably low, I find it to be an entirely, sort of quaffable kind of beer.
This is advanced for ambrosia.
Yeah. So, these kinds of beers, typically, if I look at, anything that kind of comes out of this company, I'm like wanting to sit down and sort of steady myself and sort of pace my, not that it's ever unpleasant, but that to drink slowly. But this is a beer that, I could have a good 12-ounce snifter of and just really enjoy after hot days work in the yard or whatever. It's almost a lawnmower beer, not quite, because it's more complex and interesting than that. But I would give it a 4.
But I should really not make that sound. Good old boy Dave, what do you think of Lindemans Gueuze here?
Yeah, I think this is a very drinkable beer. It's not overly tart, not overly sour. The sweetness. At one time, I thought maybe the sweetness was a bit too heavy for it, but the more I sip on it, the more I enjoy it, and the more I listen to Reverend Mark talk about it, the more I like it, So now
what's he say about every story?
Every story's true. Some of them happen.
Yeah, that's it. That's right. That was his phrase. Yes,
that's trademark, Reverend Mark. Anyways, I owe you a nickel for the royalty on that, by the way. So, I think it's a good beer. It's not, like you said, not a lawnmower beer, but it's something that you kind of said this about previous beers, a good chick beer.
Yeah,
I think
true.
That's what it would be. If you want to introduce someone to sours and to lambics and to Belgians, Lindemans is known, even with their creeks and their framboise and all their different lambics, they're known to be sort of on the sweet side, anyways, for the styles. So I think this kind of plays along those lines, and they're known for their beers being very approachable. So I'm enjoying this beer quite a bit, and I would give it a solid 3.
What a relief. Well, good old gal Julieanna, what do you think about everyone's comments then about your beer here?
Yeah, I think you've captured, what it is. It's a lot different than what a traditional sour would be, but it's a good introduction for the chicks that would like to get into sours.
And we're going to remind the chicks to bring a wine key because this had some unique aspects. So we got caught off guard that we opened this. It had a foil on it, and we opened it up. The foil, and sure enough, it wasn't a regular champagne cork. It was a wine cork that was stuffed in this, and we didn't have a wine key with us. So
thank you, Lindemans.
Yeah. So if you do pick this up, remind yourself to take along a wine key if you need this as well. So thanks for bringing that, and thank you all for all the beers you brought today. They were all awesome. And a very nice wide variety as well. And we've had a lot of good sour beer shows, haven't we?
Absolutely.
And I like the variety of what we had in this show and tell series. So sometimes I declare a bit more, narrow style, like, everybody brings this particular style of beer in show and tell, and I just kind of left it open to bring any sour. And a very good and wide variety of things that we got to have today. So I'm still having to kind of crick my neck every time I have the all funked up, Hipman hop Brett. But any of these beers you guys would go back to after you've had them?
I'd go back to the Timmermans.
Yeah,
I was about to say, is there any of this left?
It's on my list to pick up a bottle or a case.
Well, with that, I finished my my glass here for everybody today. Well, thank you once, everyone, for this episode. Thanks to all of our listeners here at Sips, Suds, and Smokes. You can catch all of our episodes online on iTunes, SoundCloud, TuneIn, Stitcher, YouTube, Uncle John's Basement, and Spreaker, our native media host. See, I can't say that without you laughing. See, I need to sing Uncle John's Basement or something like that. Our terrestrial radio station hosts are always expanding, vertically or horizontally, I'm not really quite sure, but if you would like to hear this show on your favorite radio station, send them a note and copy us as well. Feel free to compliment us on this fine episode if you'd like. Reach us online anytime. Our email address is info@sipsudsandsmokes.com. Our daily tasting notes flow out on Twitter every single day. @SipSudSmoke is our handle on Twitter. Our Facebook page is always buzzing with plenty of news, usually something about good old boy Dave in some regard, right?
That's right.
Do us a favor and take the time to do the only thing that we ask you to do. You got to listen to this show for free, probably, and if you could take the time to rate it, that would really help us. And we get to see your feedback as well. Usually those comments are about Good Old Boy Dave, aren't they?
Good and bad.
I like this show didn't have the word tapeworm in it, so.
Now it does.
Now it does. Oh, I knew that. I probably have to put a 5 in the middle, don't I? All right, anyway. I want to thank my co-host for being here for sure. Reverend Mark, thank you.
Cheers, blessings, and peace.
Good old boy Dave.
Hey, the best beer is the beer in your hand.
That's right. Good old gal Julieanna, thanks for being here.
May the beer be with you.
That's good old boy Mike. I want to thank you again for joining us and ask you to keep on sipping.
Dre, you need to wake up, okay?
I don't understand. Wake up, run.
This has been a One Tan Hand production of Sips, Suds, and Smokes, a program devoted to the appreciation of some of the finer slices of life. From the Dude in the Basement Studios, your hosts, the Good Old Boys, will see y'all next time.